Hello, people of the internet. It's Mike Furland again, doing guitar things over here at Element Zero Guitars. We are going to see me rebuild Swamp Thing. It's been a project that I've wanted to do for a while, and I felt like I owed it to myself to take the first guitar that I did a solo build of and make it a lot better than when I first attempted it. So here we go. So we are going to get this party started by disassembling Swamp Thing. And you can see here, I am starting the process by going through and removing the tuning machines. I've set up a nice little clean workspace on my coffee table to do God's work. So let's speed this up a little bit and see how this goes down. So for those of you watching this and kind of seeing me go through and yank off every one of these nuts for the tuning machines, I use just a simple wrench to loosen them, and then I take them out by hand to prevent any damage to them. But then of course sometimes you run into some problems where, you know, things are a little weird and you have to gently persuade them with a screwdriver like this. And they promptly fall out. This is pretty normal. Sometimes you just have to do it, and that's why I like to use something plastic so I don't mar up the metal. You can see here it required quite a bit of persuasion. So one of the first things that I wanted to do to Swamp Thing is do something about the headstock. And what I did is I grabbed some masking tape. I masked off the surface of the headstock where I wanted to make some cuts. And what I did was used the radius of my masking tape to carve out a semicircle in it to give the guitar the appearance of devil horns or cat ears. Now, this is something that you actually really want to take your time with. You want to look at it from different angles after you've drawn your first couple of lines on the masking tape, and just kind of look back at it, different distances, and just kind of look at it and be like, does this look like what I'm trying to accomplish? And the answer is, if it doesn't, then you erase and you try again. And the beauty is, because you're using masking tape, you won't leave any marks or residues on the wood or the finish below it. And now that we have this accomplished, we must move on to something much more sinister. I'm going to remove the nut because it sucks. And you can see that I'm just giving it a couple of whacks there with a flathead screwdriver as the ramming object, and I'm using the wrench as kind of a hammer to tap it in. You don't want to use anything too heavy because you can break it and cause yourself a lot of strife by having to remove bullshit that you didn't have to remove. But I was unsuccessful at first with that, so then I just whacked it with a screwdriver, weighing my options. So after much frustration, I return, level-headed, and I decide to take out the chisel and finish doing God's work. And just like that, it came out. Now, this is what I call a crime of convenience. I decided to get out my hobby knife and try to clean up the nut cavity before I decided to move on to any other tomfoolery with the instrument. And I'm always glad that I take a second, just try to clean something up that I just worked on, because otherwise you have these moments where you're like, I'll get to it later. And then you got lacquer on the instrument and you're wondering why things aren't lining up. So you take care of things when you notice them. Then it becomes less of a problem down the road. So now I'm going to just start taking off things. I start with the tailpiece, the bridge. And I feel like at this point, I'm feeling pretty confident. You know, I have got a lot of good energy. I'm not demotivated by anything yet. You know, things are going good. Energy's high. So I get out the screwdriver and start going to town on all the screwy thingies. Starting with the cherry pickguard that I made. But I realized that the Phillips head on that screwdriver just isn't lining up. So I have to grab another screwdriver to do this. And luckily I have an iFixit toolkit. It's probably one of the best investments you can make. But I digress. I start using my iFixit screwdriver so that I don't strip out any of the Phillips heads that I'm removing. It's very important to use the right size Phillips head screwdriver on the screw that you're removing, or else you're going to strip it out and make your life very annoying. Not to mention that recovering a screw after it's been stripped out can be very difficult, and sometimes Dremel things happen. So I'd rather not go there. So I'd use the right tool for the job, and that's kind of how most guitar building goes. You need the right tool to accomplish what you're doing, or you're going to end up breaking your own heart. And another thing that I wanted to do while I was disassembling was make sure that I was really organized. That's super important because there's a lot of different screws that go into this style guitar. If it was like a Stratocaster or a Telecaster, there'd be a lot less screws, or maybe more screws. I don't know. I have to think about it, like, really. But there's a lot of different size screws, especially when it comes to the contraption that holds the pickguard in place, and the pickup rings, the pickup screws. Yeah, it's just a mess. These guitars are a little bit more challenging than I would say like your Telecaster or Stratocaster type. And as somebody that's got a couple Strats and a couple of Tellys under my belt and a couple of these Les Paul likes, these Les Paul ones are a lot more involved, and you have to really pay attention. There's a whole separate dimension of detail that goes into one of these versus something more traditional styled Stratocaster or Telecaster. There's a lot more curves, a lot more little screws, a lot more just details. And that's another reason why I wanted to redo this guitar, because this guitar was actually me testing out a lot of different shit. Me doing Shou Sugi Ban, working with doing a complete guitar kit, just going in full bore, no thinking hat, big brain, big peepee. Removing the pots, well, the nuts for the pots. And now I have this special little contraption to remove the posts for the bridge and the tailpiece, and it is a fucking lifesaver. It's super cheap to get one of these. Remember what I said about the right tool for the job? Well, that thing, for being probably 75 cents of stuff that I could get at the hardware store, was a fucking investment that I will cherish for a lifetime. It's an Allen key, a M5 stud, a washer, and a piece of PVC pipe. Like, it's, look at how easy that is. This is a fucking lifesaver, especially when you go full big brain, big peepee, and smoke a little doobie, try to do guitar stuff. Things happen, and you realize that maybe you should have finished the guitar before you started installing the bridge hardware. And then it begs the question, how do I remove the bridge hardware? Well, this tool solves that very question completely. For brevity's sake, I'm going to start speeding this bullshit up. Yeah, you can see this tool just does one thing and it does it perfectly. And the fucking grooves are intact, so A+ to me. Big time. Big brain move. Epic. So now it's time to flip this sumbitch over and start removing the cavity covers. Now, one thing that I'm going to definitely do... Wait, I've already done it actually. I'm narrating this a few days after this video was shot, so bear with me. My brain does not think in terms of temporal mechanics. Leave that to Star Trek. Anyways, so I've already rebuilt the cavity covers using some zirconia, and actually that's just the main control cavity cover that I've rebuilt with zirconia. The control cavity cover for the switch, I actually took a Marlboro coaster that they sent me on my birthday and carved out the Vermont that was on it. So go me for being cheap. Yeah, I love doing this kind of stuff. The cavity covers and pick guards and stuff like that, doing them from scratch on wood are so much fun. And you know, it's as easy as just grabbing a part, doing the masking tape trick, which Ben Crow goes on in detail, fusing those two things together so that you can trace it out, cut it out, and then use your Shinto rasps or whatever to finish shaping it to the plastic part, or metal part in the case of a Telecaster, and make it something that's absolutely beautiful. Oh, anyway, so yeah, now I start removing the neck because that just needs to come off. You can see here I'm actually using this weird pillow to support the neck, and that's very intentional. I didn't want to damage the guitar at all while I was working on it, which is why I have the pillowcases on this coffee table as well as the pillow. And if anybody just heard that awful noise, this ratcheting screwdriver is a fucking lifesaver. You should have one. Yes, you. Anyway, so yeah, the ratcheting screwdriver is very, very good. Some would say the best. And I particularly think it's the best. And it's some very fine people. So get yourself a ratcheting screwdriver. They come in all different shapes and sizes, colors. They're beautiful. Like nothing you've ever seen before. It's incredible. Alright, you guys are probably getting bored of this shit, so let's just speed this up. And now with the neck off, we're going to switch this thing over and start removing the pickups. These are some cheap pickups I picked up off of Amazon. They're really good. Surprisingly, they're Alnico 5 magnets, which I prefer. And now I'm just taking off the nuts, and I'm just loosening them first with my Leatherman. I'm going through and hand loosening them until they come off. I like to do this. It makes sure that the nuts stay intact and don't get all marred up by the tools. Now I'm going to mask off the pickups so that they stick to the body while I try to release the cavity covers. This guitar's been assembled since about January of this year, and it's seen a little bit of upgrades here and there, such as the pickups. But as of now, we still have all the original electronics in it for pots, wiring, capacitors, jacks, all that stuff. And most of it's okay, but I kind of want to neaten up the wiring. And sorry, I got that out of focus. Oh, look at that. There's some dust on that pillowcase. Yeah, there's some dust on that pillowcase from the guitar, so I didn't do a good job cleaning this thing out before I assembled it. Good me. But yeah, you can see here the wiring harness that they have for this thing is absolutely fucking atrocious. There is so much wasted wire inside of there, and I understand they make these kits for the lowest common denominator, and they are super affordable, which means that a lot of corners are cut. But at the same time too, there's just no excuse for this, and there's no excuse for the hackery that I did to get the new pickups in there either. So that's another reason why this all has to come out. This is all, you know, a rebirth of sorts. But anyways, let's speed this back up. Don't want to get too verbose and weird. And now we are successfully going to do a barrel roll and remove all the wires and the electronics. Just look at that. See, wasting masking tape can be a really good idea. And I only did that because I didn't want to, you know, fuck anything up. This already looks a little ratchet, as some of you kids would say. So, yeah, I wanted to not hurt this any more than I had to. And you can see my little ground wire poking out of that hole there near the bridge pickup cavity. Yeah. And I start contemplating the meaning of life. So yeah, now it's time to just remove little things like the jack, the strap, buttons, you know, the standard. Yeah, the hole near the pot is one of the things that I definitely wanted to address with this remakening. So let's get the power tools out. Let's have a little bit of fun. We're gonna use our good old friend, the angle grinder. Now, typically you're supposed to do this with two hands. This is the wrong way to use an angle grinder. And let me repeat that again. This is the wrong way to use an angle grinder. Now, I have not hurt myself, but this angle grinder lacks a handle, and that's not good. And also, I don't have this clamped down, which is also another big no-no. But when things are a little bit weird and you just kind of do something spur of the moment, this sometimes happens. So, no matter if you're doing things the safe way or the wrong way, just always be safe. What I'm really trying to say is pay attention, take your time, and don't rush. Do it right. That's what Pappy would do. Shaping is one of my favorite parts of building guitars. The power tools are very fun but scary, very easy to screw things up, and require a lot of intervention with hand tools. And if you're like me, I try to use a mix of both electric and hand tools. Now I'm going to slow this down a little bit. This right here is a Shinto Saw planer. I don't know if it's really all that good at planing, but I wanted to see if this one would remove more material than my other Shinto Saw. So let's just speed this up a little bit. It's a lot of that ya. Oh yeah, just going around there with a rasp, removing some of the material right there. You know, doing it at an angle. Oh yeah. Oh, well, that's just what we do, and this tool is effective. Now, while I'm doing all this different carving, I have to go through and just kind of clean up things. The angle grinder sometimes can be a real bastard. So sometimes you have to use things like Dremels, other types of rasps and files. You know, whatever it takes to get the job done. It's definitely a labor of love at this point. This is the stuff that I just love doing. And so if your poor ears weren't offended by all the other tools I've ran, here's my broken and orbital sander just going through and going full fucking dog shit on this thing. And where I'm starting with primarily is with the places that I've hit with the other tools to try to smooth those out as much as possible and work my way to the top of the instrument where the finish is. And you can see that before I used tongue oil and some stains, so it comes out pretty quick and easy. And the idea of this is not really to strip it bare, but just kind of clean it up, because we're going to do some fun things to it. Like more Shinto Saw. Shinto Saw is my favorite. So at this point I decide to switch to my regular Shinto Saw instead of the Shinto Saw planer. I guess just for reasons that can only be described by preference and just feel. And of course, more sanding. It's a delicate balance, kind of jumping between the two. And you too can enjoy this craft of going through and Shinto sawing and sanding, because it's actually quite a fun hobby to get into. And so now that we have sanded and done some fun things to this with the Shinto Saw and, well, every other tool I can throw at this thing, I decide to pull a Ben Crow move because it's a good starter move. Very popular, and we're gonna go right to burning this motherfucker. Yeah. And so yeah, you might be asking yourself, yeah, Mike, why you gotta go burn such a nice guitar like that? You know, you could have just you could have done something nice to it. You didn't have to go and burn the goddamn thing and ruin it. Well, the reason why I like doing this is it actually kind of makes the grain pop. And I do like the feeling of popped grain. It's kind of like having a like a pop top or a tic tac or a tuck tuck. You know, it's just one of those things. You need it. So I just go around here first, starting with the edges, because those are kind of the hardest to control for me. And then, you know, just kind of go through and like paint the top of the guitar with fire. Literally, that is the game plan. Just kind of get everything as well done as the rest of it. You know, we're not really looking for a medium rare job. This is not something that you can just serve well done with ketchup. This is a guitar. We got to try to keep it as uniform as possible, because it's not so much about the look of what we're doing, and it's more about feel. You'll really start to see what I mean as we get into subsequent videos about what's changing with this instrument. But yeah, let's just burn this motherfucker. And if you can't tell, I'm running low on fuel, so I start to panic a little bit because the hardware store is not open after 5. And you know, I really like this torch. I'd rather not go to the store and get more juice for it if I don't have to or need to. Yeah. And as you see now, I'm just going to go through and just kind of sand it up a little bit. It's more or less about just trying to make sure that there's a few spots that are really nice and smooth, because I want to really have the grain feel be just on the face of the instrument, and where the carves are, I want them to be kind of smooth. That, and I just have to kind of beat back a lot of this char. So we're just gonna, we're gonna sand to just kind of make it nice enough for us to work with. And unfortunately, what's going to end up happening is that hole in the body is going to get bigger. So what you won't see on camera is me patching that hole and fixing that problem for good. But yeah, you can commiserate with me and We can cry together and eat cookies. Yeah. Well, motherfucker in a turtle shell. The goddamn camera wasn't recording while I was doing all this awesome cutting. And it's probably for the best that you guys don't see me use my bandsaw. Because I'm not really the best at this kind of stuff. Oh, and that was quite the hot cut getting us to here. Because we are done with the body at this point. So we might as well start doing what we were doing, when we were doing, how were we doing here with this neck. So, yeah. Let's jump in. We're going to go at this, Shinto Saw, shape it up, and then we're going to have some fun. And we're going to attack this with just about every rasp file and thing that we can muster up here. You can see me stumbling around to try to find stuff. I'm going to bust out the Dremel, because that's how we do, and what we do. Then I'm going to stumble some more. We're going to bring out that good old radius file. That's a good move. A lot of people say that it's a good thing to have these, and I think that it's a great idea to have these kicking around, especially with the proliferation of cheap tools at places like Harbor Freight. There's just no reason why you can't have one of those. Same goes for a Dremel. Dremel's a pretty awesome tool for, you know, how cheap it is. It's definitely a lifesaver, and it is definitely awesome sauce. And once again, we're using fire because it helps us in weird ways. Actually, what I'm trying to do is just force the wood to dry out a little bit, and especially right there where I'm trying to carve that radius, I'm just trying to give myself a little bit easier of a time to clean up some of the mess I made with a bandsaw. So now we're just back to shaping this radius again, trying to even it out, make it look nicer, clean up the mess I made with the bandsaw, the whole 9 yards. That's pretty much what happens when we have this crap happen. And after some time, it was time to just start going through and sanding, because it's important to sand off the old finish, make it happy, get it ready to be further barbecued. You typically don't want to do this stuff to wood that has finish on it. It can cause a fucking fire, so we're trying to have a controlled burn here. And again, what I'm trying to do here is not really do a full Shou Sugi Ban where we would finish the instrument with tung oil and dye it or stain it. The idea primarily with this is to kind of make the wood smoother and also make the grain pop. It's been my experience that it really brings out the wood grain and makes it feely. But what I'm going to do now is start preparing some 2-part grain filler provided by our friends at Minwax. There are some imperfections in the headstock that I wanted to get out before I do anything else to the guitar neck. Anyways, if you look really closely at the headstock, you'll see that there's a big chip out there. So we want to get rid of that. And basically, this Minwax wood filler is pretty much Bondo. Originally, I tried to mix in some some stain into it to kind of tint it. It didn't really come out the way that I wanted it to, and I just kind of gave up on the idea. This Remakening is more of a kind of be inspired by what's in front of me and finish it based off of that, rather than having a concrete plan. Now you can see that I'm using a guitar pick to push this into the wood. I decided to do this right after I did the roast of the neck without doing any real sanding, just so that I could preserve a little bit of that feel while also kind of covering up some of the imperfections that had been left behind in the wood prior to that. And now we're at the end of our footage. I'm going to show you guys just a little bit of what I've been working on. What you're seeing here is a little bit of handiwork cloning the cavity cover that I got with the guitar kit with zirconia, and this is a thing that Marlboro sent me on my birthday that was a drink coaster that I decided to turn into that. So yeah, a lot of really cool things are happening, and I can't wait to show you guys what I've been up to in the next video. Unfortunately, I don't have any footage of this, but I've been doing a lot of finishing, and you are going to see what I've done to it. And it's starting to look pretty cool. I'm starting to feel really happy about it. Anyways, guys, drive slow, drink milk.